Howdy, everyone, and welcome back, of course, to another episode of the Hashira Half Hour, where we will be discussing episode 11 of Jujutsu Kaisen Shibuya Incident arc, with the title of the episode being Thunderclap this week. Another action-packed episode this week, although I would like to preface for this episode that there is some difficult content today, so I'd encourage listeners to ensure that they are in the correct headspace to listen, or maybe if that doesn't sound like you, it might be best to skip this episode. Help is available to anyone in need 24/7. If you're listening in the US, the phone number is 988. With that being said, there's so much to discuss, so let's just jump right in. I will be your host today, and I am joined by my friend Mina.
Hello, everybody. I'm here. I'm ready. I just got back from South Dakota. I drove 18 hours there and 18 hours back. I'm glad to be home.
Yeah, that's a long drive to go see some presidents in Rock. Looks great, though. Today we also have a very special guest. Please welcome my partner Tom back to the Hashira Half Hour. We are so happy to have you back here today, my boy.
Hi, for those who can't see me, I'm waving.
Very nice. All right. Well, we honestly have so much to get through today, so I'm just going to jump right in because we could probably talk about this episode for hours. There's a lot to unpack and uncover. So we open with like a killer shot here, right? We have Jogo falling from the sky. Sukuna's following after him with a very crazed look in his eyes. And I know that right here we're just barely getting a glimpse, but it doesn't really seem like things are going well for Jogo right now, huh?
Yeah, they've done a lot of really interesting things this season specifically, where they'll kind of tease something in either the end of the episode before, and in this case, it's the beginning of this episode, and kind of tease a moment that's leading into the next thing. So I like how they started it with like, oh my god, I'm getting my ass kicked, and then just cutting to specials and then coming back and like seeing how we got there. I thought that was really fun.
I was thinking about this as I was watching it, and I know that like shit's about to go down when it's like 10 seconds of something and then the OP starts. Whenever anime does that, especially Jujutsu Kaisen, I know that it's going to be an episode. I'll say that. But seeing Sukuna just being super crazy and just going after Jogo, I kind of figured that he wasn't going to really stand a chance against him, and it feels like he isn't, but I know we'll revisit that later on in the episode, so I'll keep my lips tight for now.
That's fair enough. Honestly, the fact that he even agreed to the fight is kind of like mind-boggling to me because like I don't know, like I think he knows that he probably doesn't stand a chance, but he's like kind of tempted by Sukuna like dangling this little fruit in front of him. Like, all you need to do is just touch me. Just land like one hit on me. You don't have to win. You just have to touch me. And then I'll do what you want. And he's like, maybe I could do that. I don't think I can win, but maybe I could at least touch him. We're going to have to wait and see. The odds are not looking so great right at the moment. But as Jujutsu Kaisen is notoriously known for, we do cut to specials and then immediately to something else. Like, we are not going to get that instant gratification in this show ever. However, this is a different kind of gratification that we're getting pretty quickly because we cut back to Toji and Megumi, which is a long anticipated and awaited reunion, at least by us, the audience anyway. Megumi doesn't actually realize who exactly this person is that he's about to fight. To me, he really is like living his most unhinged Bella Swan moment here. He's like, you're impossibly fast and strong. I know what you are, but he doesn't know what he is. It's about to turn into like a Star Wars moment real quick instead. So Megumi releases the hairs again, and what ensues next is one of the most just like unhinged and insane sequences I've seen animated here. Please tell me your thoughts about Toji versus Megumi's rabbit escape.
Shout out to the one rabbit that went blow for blow with Toji for 2 seconds, got thrown by his mouth, and then came back and led the charge with all the other rabbits. Like, shout out to that rabbit in particular. Or hare, whatever. Yeah, he's a real one for that. Definitely unhinged. They like putting things in Toji's mouth this season. First it was the fish, and he's like, bleh. And now he's like throwing rabbits with his mouth. It's a little unhinged, but like, I'm into it. I mean, whatever.
Mappa knows what they're doing. Again,
I say. No kink shaming in JJK. Let's be real.
Oh my god. All right. That was the last time Tom was on the podcast. No, he would fit in perfectly. I don't know if he even listened to our one about Nanami a couple weeks ago. No kink shaming. Alas, another rated R episode of the Hashira Half Hour.
I was gonna crack the Megumi I am your father joke, but I feel like we've moved away from that. All I can say is this season just keeps one-upping itself. I think it's been very clear. I've made myself clear that I've been a little bit iffy on this show until this season, and so far this season just continues to like one-up itself. I think I saw somewhere that this episode was rated like 9.9 on IMDb or something, and it was like its first time getting that high of a rating, so good for them. I think it's mostly because of this scene. I was loving it. It was a great scene.
Yeah, this was like crazy. Before I'd read something like Jujutsu Kaisen, and honestly, even just before watching it, for the anime onlys out there, like, I don't know, like, Toji beating up a bunch of rabbits was not exactly on my bingo card. But, and honestly, that sounds like kind of pathetic when you say it out loud. It's like, oh, you went up against like the Easter Bunny, good job. But it's like thousands of them, and he solos them. And also, he like, you know, he throws his like nunchucks up in the air, and all of this happens before they fall back into his hands. Showing again, he is impossibly fast and strong. And it's just like absolutely unhinged. And I think Megumi has like no idea what to even begin to possibly think about doing about it. Because he's never gone up against anybody like this.
Well, didn't he call him a perfected Maki?
Yeah.
Isn't that what he said?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
and yet he still hasn't like put two and two together quite yet. Like, this guy looks like me. He looks like Maki. He acts like Maki. Who is he?
He doesn't have time.
They've shown speaking of like throwing his weapon up in the air, that's the second time that they've done that with Toji to really show how fast he is. They did it when he was in the seance too. I think he threw up, it was what's it called? The do-rag. And that went up in the air, and then he attacked everybody before that fell too. So I think it's a really cool way to show like how fast he's actually moving.
It's like insanely fast how much he's moving. And again, that makes the contrast between like anybody normal seeing him and how Gojo saw him in Hidden Inventory so cool. How the animators like added all these little things, and they did a lot of that this episode, so I'm excited to talk about those. But we don't get to see more of Toji and Megumi right at this moment. We're going to come back to them. Right now, we are cutting back to Panda, actually, and Kusakabe, who we haven't seen in a while. And honestly, Kusakabe's reaction to everything is probably the most sane out of anybody that's like here in Shibuya right now, because he's really just trying to stay alive and avoid the basement levels where he knows some shit is going down. What did you think about this duo and their approach to the appearance of two additional curse users yet to be named?
Kusakabe's reaction is really interesting, I think. They've talked about him in an earlier episode. Mai talked about him a little bit, and he is a grade 1 sorcerer, and he doesn't have a curse technique like Yuji. He's very much like Yuji. But one thing that's really interesting about him, and I've seen a lot of hate with his reaction to this on Twitter, everybody's like, oh, he's a coward, like he doesn't want to fight anybody. But what he's actually really good at is judging strength. Like immediately, he's like, oh, these two guys that just popped up, I can kick their asses, like no problem, they're not an issue. But Sukuna or whatever, he doesn't even say who it is. He's like, 2 special grades are fighting over there, we got to get out of here. Like, he's very good, and that's probably why he's still alive in the universe of JJK, is because he can instantly tell, like, oh, I can take this guy, oh, I can't, like, we need to avoid this fight. And he's like, we got to go. So I think that his character is really interesting in that regard. Also, he's just hands. Well, he has a sword, but, you know, no curse technique. He's just out here with hands like Yuji. I think that's fun.
I actually like that you bring that up, because I didn't see any hate for him, but I'm not on, like, super hardcore JJK Twitter yet. I kind of have stayed away from it a little bit, but he's so relatable in this moment, because like that's a character I look at and I'm like, yeah, that would be me, like trying to keep away from where the big fight is happening, and I wouldn't be smart enough to come up with like the plans that he made, plans for Panda, so that they were staying away from it. But I like that you brought up, Tom, that it's because he just can tell, like he is aware of just how strong people are, so he's very sensitive to that. And if I had something like that, I would be just like him, trying to kind of keep away from that, because I would know, like, this is something that I cannot fight, and I'm going to keep myself from certain death by trying to stay away from that, essentially.
Yeah, it's like he's like, you people can all go rush yourselves into some natural selection right now, but I'm good up here.
It's smart. I'm going to stay away because I know I can't take it. Like, know when to not go into battle.
And there's probably like a Venn diagram somewhere of like people that want to win, people that want to survive, and maybe some people in the middle that can kind of try to figure out how to do both. But it's interesting because, like, depending on the character, they really feel differently about it, I think. And this guy wants to live.
I'll tell you who's the worst judge of that is definitely Jogo. Because he's, like, really strong, like super strong. Like, he's a special grade disaster curse. Like, but he only has hands for, like, the strongest characters. Like, literally. He fights Sukuna and Gojo. Like, everybody's like, oh, Jogo's weak. It's like, no, he's just fighting, like, the strongest people in the verse. Like, so obsessed. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely like both ends of the spectrum. There's like Jogo and Kisakabe on like both sides.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it honestly hilarious. And then you have Nanami, our favorite, who just doesn't want to work overtime, which I also understand. There's a Venn diagram of people who want to work overtime and people who don't. And in the middle is, am I limiting my career? Okay, that's too much. All right, so brief cutaway to Panda, which is fun. Again, I like Panda a lot, actually, and we don't get to see him that much right now. So always happy to get like the little cameo of these slightly smaller characters. But then, you know, we have to know what's going down with Megumi and Toji. So we cut back to them, and they are chasing each other through the city streets of Shibuya. And this chase fight scene is also maybe equally as insane as Toji like slaughtering all of those rabbits a few minutes ago. Toji's like literally throwing cars up in the air with like just his brute physical strength, because remember, he does not have a curse technique. He just has like these heavenly restrictions and is insanely fast and strong. And Megumi is really just out here doing his best. He is trying to dodge like these cars and other items that Toji is launching at him. Soon, Toji is also starting to throw Playful Cloud, his nunchucks, which is like, you don't want to come in contact with that. He is still out here, Megumi's still out here doing his best, but he decides that since Shoko is stationed somewhere nearby, he's hoping to kind of get out of here with like the fewest injuries possible, and he needs to try to end the fight as quickly as possible, knowing that she can help heal him. I don't know that Megumi could beat Toji in a contest of brute strength, but do you think that Megumi could figure out a way to outwit Toji?
Absolutely. Well, maybe not absolutely, but I talked about this a little bit when Yuji and Megumi were fighting the older guy a few episodes ago, and it was like the brains, the brawn, right? So Megumi is at a severe disadvantage because I think his way of fighting is a bit more of a long-range fight, and Toji is just so fast that he cannot keep up. But I do think that Toji is that brute strength. He's just like going at him and attacking him right, left, center. Megumi is the one who can think of something. And it's super helpful that Shoko is nearby. It's super helpful to have someone who is able to heal people. And we found out, too, that she healed 2 others that we thought were dead. I can't remember their names, but I believe it was like leading on that they were killed, and then turns out they're fine. So it's helpful that she's there. And Megumi is smart to be like, you know what, I'm just going to take on some kind of injury. I just got to make sure that it's not fatal. It's so scary. Oh my God. But I think he's capable of it, and I think he's thinking it out right now.
Yeah, I think of a lot of the characters. Your shirt. I think of the characters that we've seen actually get into battles in JJK so far, I think Megumi he's not the smartest character, he's not the strongest character, but he does have one of the highest battle IQs, and that really just comes from experience. He's very much like, almost every fight we've seen him in, he's like on the verge of dying, and somehow he just like thinks of something, and he's like, okay, I can do this. And then he figures out a way to avoid dying. Especially up against a character like Toji, who's extremely strong. He still finds a way. I mean, most of the characters in the verse probably would have died by one of those cars, to be honest. Like, they wouldn't have even made it to where he's at. So the fact that he's even alive in this moment is really impressive. Especially as, what is he? He's a second year right? So
I think so.
I think-
No,
Yeah.
I think he's
No,
a first year.
year.
first year,
He's the same
Yeah, I
year
think
as Yuji.
Yeah, he, Yuji, and Nobara.
Yeah.
don't
think
come
they're all
after me
first
in the
years.
comments, please.
The amount of
They're
times I
young,
get
is the
facts wrong
point.
on
Even
this.
more impressive, just further proving my point that how impressive he is and his ability to think really fast, which we get to later also with the ending scene, but we'll get there.
I wonder why I like him so much. There's another character in
Yeah.
another show that's constantly on the brink of death and then thinking up things to get out of it.
Honestly, this scene with the cars for some reason did actually remind. Since we're gonna bring up Demon Slayer, it did.
Okay.
But it kind of did remind me of like the entertainment district a little. Like, I don't know, like just that specific shot, probably because he's like running across the rooftops. And I'm like, imagine though if like somebody threw a car at Zenitsu, like I don't think that would go well. Or Inosuke, who like didn't know what the train was and was like, I'm gonna fight you, and he's like fighting the car.
Like,
And then we end up with like the Inosuke versus Bumblebee edits or something. I don't know. No, that's like ADHD brain. Back to Megumi. I agree. I think Megumi is probably smarter than Toji. I think that the key to this is like, can he think of something quickly enough? Because Toji is so fast that it's like it almost leaves no room for thinking. It's like you almost just have to act on impulse, which is not necessarily Megumi's strongest suit without at least that brief moment to formulate some kind of plan. That's something that Yuji's good at, actually. And we don't get to see it right at this moment, but I actually would have really enjoyed getting to see Yuji versus Toji at some point. I wonder how that would have gone. Both of them like really just hands, but Yuji acting like strictly on impulse.
There would have been a lot of back and forth with the car throwing, I think.
You're probably
it would have gone
right.
both ways.
No, Yuji would be like driving the car and trying to run him over. Alas, that is not the fight we get to see, but once again, we cut away from Megumi and Toji because they mention another character, so we have to see what's going on with Shoko now, right? So we cut to the elusive Shoko and Principal Yaga, and she's like kind of sitting there and she's encouraging him to join the fight with everybody else, but he deflects and says that she needs to be protected at all costs for her healing techniques. And then goes on to explain that she can heal others with reversed curse techniques, which is a skill that not even Gojo possesses. And I think it's really interesting and like refreshing to see, again, kind of a minor character up to this point. We know she's important as far as like friends go from the hidden inventory arc to Gojo and Geto, but I feel like seeing the healer character be so highly revered by people in like places of leadership is it is refreshing and it's interesting because I feel like we very often see the opposite for the character who fills this role in other shonen animes. I'm looking at you, Naruto, or even shows like Black Clover or more unconventional healers like Winry in Full Metal Alchemist. I feel like they're not as highly revered, and actually they're often called like by the fan bases useless. So even though we only see her for a moment, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on Shoko's role in this show. Do you feel, regardless of what the principal says, is she useful in terms of the narrative?
I feel like in other animes, people overuse a healer, like especially in like My Hero. You have this doctor who can like basically heal you back to the way that you were, unless you're Deku and you're just kind of an idiot and using, your abilities past where they're supposed to go. I feel like in JJK, it's a rare chance to even get to heal because most of the time you're either coming out mostly unscathed or you're dying in JJK. So I feel like because it's that opportunity is used less often, I feel like it makes that role more important because you're not really relying on it. For the most part, like nobody's really safe. So to even get that chance is rare.
I think very often healers within like the scope of the power structure of the show can kind of be just like plot armor for characters. They're just kind of there, especially if they show up like right when the character is about to die and it's like, oh, by the way, I'm a healer. It's like, oh, okay. But I feel like Shoko is a little bit different. And interestingly enough, I saw on Twitter someone call her a useless healer when that might be me just not knowing what's to come and maybe, her character just completely falls off. Who knows? But you guys know. I don't. But I think that she, from what I've seen in the past, during the hidden inventory arc, she saved Geto because Geto took on some pretty intense injuries from Toji. So I feel like she has been extremely useful. Obviously, Geto went down a path and turned into this whole situation, but I think just seeing that kind of proved what she's capable of. And kind of to go back on the previous question, like Megumi knows that she is there and is just like, I will be fine as long as I don't sustain like pretty much an instant death wound. And she saved the other two people that I thought were dead. So I think she's really interesting. I like that she's kind of been there and didn't just show up to save someone. She's kind of been there, and that it's a reverse technique. So it goes along with the story and feels much less just like, oh, she's just there to be a healer, nothing else.
It's like less Deus Ex Machina, for sure. Yeah, and it's interesting to know, like, and we didn't see her a lot in Hidden Inventory either, and, like, all the students have their natural proclivities already that would, like, make sense, that, like, lend to probably different career paths, I guess, as jujutsu sorcerers. It makes me wonder, like, you know, we talk about Geto and Gojo and, like, their friendship a lot, but technically, like, it was a trio, and, like, Shoko was part of that. And so it makes me wonder, like, how much she might have leaned into the healing, knowing what had happened to her friends when they were at that, like, young, tender age. I think she's interesting. She's, like, very layered for a character that we don't get to see a whole lot. Hopefully we'll get to see some more of Shoko, although I hope it's not because our characters are injured in a devastating way. Granted, nobody's safe. Nobody's ever safe. I can never have anything I want. Except for this, because we do cut back again to Toji and Megumi, who are now in, like, a dark alley. Megumi's kind of, like, led him down, and they're engaging now in close combat. Toji does land a non-fatal, but still not good wound on Megumi's, like, abdomen, and in doing so, and getting that close, Toji is able to very closely observe Megumi's technique, and he realizes, even though he's like a seance and not even the full version, like, he realizes that Megumi is his son in this moment after observing the technique. He backs off really, really quick, and he asks one last question, which is really simple. He just wants to confirm, what's your name? And when Megumi says Fushiguro instead of Zenin, we see that Toji, like, gives a rare smile. He says, good for you, and then he does stab himself in the head to kill the vessel that he has been resurrected in, and to therefore save his son, because other than this brief moment, he's like a killing machine in this current state. So, taking himself out to save his kid. Let's dissect this scene a bit. What are your thoughts? I feel like there's so much to unpack here.
I feel like it's almost a bit of redemption for Toji, because from the moment he was introduced, he was like, my son? What are you talking about? He's been a horrible father, right? I think in this moment you can see that there's still love enough to be willing to end his life for him. Is it a full redemption arc? I don't know. I think it just kind of shows us a side to him that we haven't seen yet, and shows us that there is a bit of a heart there. I don't know. A part of me thinks that if Megumi had said his name was Zenin instead of Fushiguro, there could have been a different outcome. I don't know what it would have been, but I feel like the fact that he said that he, had taken on his mother's name instead of his father's name, I think that set off his decision to do that. I don't know, like, why my brain goes that way, and I'm still working to process through that, because there was a lot happening in these few seconds, but it was almost like he was like proud of him, and it's a side that surprised me. It made me tear up, and I don't even know what else to say, because it was just a really, like, emotional moment and a good end for him, in my opinion.
Yeah, there's a lot of really fun, or I shouldn't say fun details, but details that I think are fun within the scene, especially when it's animated. The one that instantly comes to mind for me is that his eyes turn from black to white, and they're, like, very clear, and they have, like, the reflection in the eyes, and it's a very soft image of Toji, which isn't something that we get very often. And to kind of echo off of that, Hannah, you might know more about this than I do, but obviously the English translation that's in the manga and here in the anime is he says good for you, but from what I've seen online about what he says in Japanese is a very soft and, like, kind of optimistic way of saying good for you. I don't know exactly what he said. I'd have to take a look, so maybe you're better at that than me, but that is also another side of Toji that we haven't really seen. We've seen him be like, put up this front like, oh, like, I don't need anyone, I'm like the loner, I've cast aside everything. But here in his final moments, again, he's thinking of his son, which he did on his first death, and now he's doing it again with his second death, which is very interesting.
It is interesting. And this is the first one that's like outwardly displayed also, because the other soft moment that like we as the audience were privy to with Toji was like an internal monologue that was happening. And it was like he was remembering the voice of like Megumi's mom. And like he's like, oh, like, where did that happen? Like, where did I change somewhere along the way? Because at one point something else mattered to me. And that was nice. But again, it like nobody else really knew about that moment except for us. This is like said directly to Megumi. And it's like, and I still don't know if Megumi realizes who this is. I feel like if he, and he is smart, he may have like some inkling very slightly, but I don't know that it's like enough to like draw a firm conclusion. Toji's a really interesting character. And I think that this was like, this felt more gratifying, I think, than his first death in Hidden Inventory. Even though it was at the hands of Gojo, and that was also a really exciting and interesting fight. This was a softer ending, like you said, Tom. He got chunked in Hidden Inventory. He got scooped. He got the Baskin Robbins 31 flavors.
I'm not going to say that I literally just went back and rewatched that moment while you were talking, but I definitely rewatched and I went back and rewatched that
I saw you clicking around.
I was like, I need to see what he said. So he actually said, I'm glad is the translation that we got, and it was yokattana, which we've heard that phrase a lot if we watch a lot of anime, which it usually gets translated to thank goodness. I think I've actually talked about this. Yokatta is actually the past tense of good. So it is a much like softer way to say like I'm glad. It means like it was good. Usually if someone were to say like good for you or thank goodness, they would more say like anbatane, not yokattana. So I don't know the full translation behind that and like the nuances within the language, but it usually is a bit more of a like, oh, thank goodness, rather than
like a sigh of relief type deal.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
That's super cool. Not what you'd expect from him. And it's even weird to say that this like I hesitate to say that this was a nice moment because it like this is the moment that I give warning to our audience about because it is upsetting still. This has got to be like, even if Megumi doesn't know who this is like gut-wrenching to watch somebody like plunge a knife into their own head, you know, like regardless of whether you know them or not. That's like traumatizing, and it's just like among the other traumatizing things that he's seen in this one evening in Shibuya. And yet there's like something soft about it. It's like it's very interesting how they contrast it. I don't know if that's like problematic or not, but it's how the story goes, and life is messy and complicated, and so is death.
And this might be like the non-manga reader in me that's thinking ahead, but I still feel like at some point Megumi is going to either remember or find out. We can talk about his state at the end of the episode here in a moment, but I feel like he is going to find out, and I think that makes it even more traumatizing to watch someone do that in front of you, and then to not at that moment understand that it's your father, kind of, but also at the same time, like, figure that out later on that's like not even something that I can even fathom.
Yeah, it's interesting, and we don't have to talk about these kinds of scenes for a long time, but like it does give me pause, and it makes me think of like Tanjiro also in the Mugen Train film, or like in those episodes, like it's different kinds of resolve, but ultimately it comes down to like self-sacrifice literally and like saving the people that matter to you. So it's interesting that that's a theme that's like recurrent in a lot of these popular shows. But we're going to move on from this like very heavy conversation because we still have a lot to talk about because this was like literally only the halfway point of the episode, guys. Like
there's so much in this episode. It's actually crazy.
It's all like so good, and it all does so much to move the story forward. So now we get to cut back to the beginning, and we need to talk about Jogo and Sukuna, because what an incredible fight scene here. Let's just start there. what were your thoughts upon seeing this fight scene? Do you think the actual combat went sort of the way you expected? And for Tom, how did it compare to the manga for you?
Well, I got excited about what was going to happen because I heard who the animator was, and I meant to look up his name, and I totally forgot to do it. But it's the same animator that did the fight scene from
Mob Psycho.
Mob Psycho. The blind guy in Mob Psycho. I didn't look up any of this before, and I'm just not prepared. But I heard it be the same animator, and that fight scene is really good. And there's a lot of like buildings flying around, and there's like all these, like, you really see the speed. And I was like, if I were to just pick an animator, that's like who I would pick. So I was really excited about it, because this is like kind of a crazy fight, and it's one of those things where it's like the end of Attack on Titan, where it's like, how are you even going to animate that? And then you see it and you're like, oh my God, it's perfect. And I think on an animation standpoint, it's just like on a completely different level. It's probably one of the best animated scenes we've seen this year, just in general. It's up there with like Gear 5, Attack on Titan's finale. This is probably in the conversation for that, but yeah, it was pretty cool. Comparing it to the manga, I don't know. I go back and forth on like what is better and what's not, but for this, it's like, obviously I want to see it moving and really see the speed. Also, they added in a troll face, like a frame of a troll face. I mean, not exactly, but when Sukuna is flying through the buildings and chasing Jogo, there is like a flash frame of what looks like a troll face, which I think is really funny. But it just shows that like he is like having a blast actually doing this and just going crazy, which is it's really fun to watch.
It definitely, I agree, is one of the best of the year. The scene that I directly like thought of when I watched this was obviously Demon Slayer episode 5 this season for the Hinokami Kagura Sun Halo Dragon Head dance that had all of us like rewatching a couple times. I rewound this one a few times, and it kind of had similar feel because I love any fight with fire. Like, I think these animes are really just making the flames dance so beautifully in every like way, shape, and form, you know, like all the way going back to Mugen Train with Rengoku's flames, of course Tanjiro's flames, and here in Jujutsu Kaisen, you know, we have Jogo's flames, and then, you know, it just another one of the reasons why this episode, I don't know if it's my favorite of the season. It might be because it's just so good, and I'm a sucker for good fight scenes. Like, that's what gets me hyped up the most in an anime. So super well done. Another shout out to the animators for their amazing work on this show, because they are killing it with this episode and with Attack on Titan that just came out last weekend that had some freaking fantastic action sequences. We're eating good.
Mappa has us eating good, and I don't care what anybody says. Y'all need to be nice to them, because
Literally.
thank you, Mappa. Also, as a manga reader, I think it's so critical to have the added context of motion in scenes like this, and it benefited so much. Something that Tom and I actually talked about after we finished watching it was like how we felt that it benefited from like the simpler line illustrations as well, which reminded me a little, like, I know that it was done by the Mob Psycho guy, but to tie in another fan favorite for us, like, it did remind me of like some of the early Naruto fights, and I think it was like there's definitely some inspiration behind some of that, because it's almost like when the lines become simpler, it feels more frantic to me, at least. It's like, this isn't meant to be pretty. This isn't meant to be like a show-stopping like number. This is like brutal and real and like a graphic depiction of the insanity that's happening. And anybody normal that would be watching this wouldn't even be able to follow with like how quickly it's probably happening. So I thought that was carried out really, really well by the animators. And there were like some fun little like Easter eggs here that were like added that I don't believe were in the manga. I'd have to go double check, but like the thermometer, for example, I don't think that that's in the manga, and we got to see it just like shoot up and like explode. And it's like, oh, that's right, because he's like turning Shibuya into a volcano, and they're like literally fighting inside of a volcano. He is so strong. Like, Jogo against anyone else probably would win pretty quickly. As Tom mentioned, he really, really has a knack for picking his opponents. But he's like melting Shibuya. It's like just the concept of that is absolutely crazy. And this is all happening in addition to everything else that's going on that we just talked about. And I feel like part of the reason that they keep cutting between everything so much is because it's all happening concurrently. It's not really that this is like sequential. It's like, you know, to reference yet another anime, it's like Hunter x Hunter, it's been 30 seconds. It's been like an hour. It's been like at least an hour, I think. I think our narrator has given us some timestamps.
They give timestamps just on the screen a lot, but it's hard to keep up with that and read the subtitles.
Regardless, it is still the same evening. It is still October 31st, Shibuya, or maybe the morning of November 1st at this point. I'm not sure, but this is a crazy, crazy fight, and like rest in peace to all of the innocent bystanders that were like in the general vicinity. And honestly, even like, just to briefly mention, like, we see Panda and Kusakabe again for a second, and it's like, oh, we gotta get out of here. And Sukuna's like, you can leave when I say that you can leave, unless you melt first. Which, for a second, I had forgotten that happened. I'm like, maybe he might just let them. He might just let them melt. He might just like to see that. Sick freak.
Yeah,
we're not gonna kink shame.
Going back to the like small details that are in the episode, like the thermometer going up, which is really, really cool to watch. They also added a small detail of when they're doing like their final heat for heat battle. The glass actually melts in the air, which I guess like glass is like a super high melting point. So just to show like the environment around them is like literally melting, and they're just like standing there in like this heat fighting, which I thought was a really cool detail that can easily be overlooked because I think it's just like one shot that's in there, but it really shows like the environment that they're in is pretty extreme, and pretty much anybody in there would be dead. So
there's a lot of really cool little details in this episode. I can write a whole essay just about that. I'll get to a few of them in my favorite moment coming up soon, but as good as this fight is, and as much as we could keep talking about it, and as strong as they both are, I do feel like there is still a clear winner in the room. And the way that they cut to this is kind of savage, actually, because like we don't even see like the finishing blow. We just cut to like curse heaven. Or purgatory is probably the more appropriate phrase. It's like a liminal white space, and we see Jogo, so we're like, oh man, like I knew he didn't stand a chance, but I was kind of rooting for him against Sukuna a little bit. But we see him like greeting his deceased comrades, Hanami and Dagon, and we know it's game over for him. But you know, they encourage him, they remind him that Mahito is still alive and can like carry on their will. And then Sukuna appears because he can just shift through like space and time and heaven and hell, apparently. And he shows up to just tell him like, hey, like, I know that probably didn't end the way that you wanted it to, but you are strong. You should be proud. And that moment was striking to me. It seemed almost out of character for Sukuna as far as we've seen him so far. What did you guys take away from this?
Yeah, that's one of my favorite moments from the episode is that, and I was talking to Emily about this after the episode, but there is that statement of stand proud, you're strong, that Sukuna says to Jogo, which is literally the opposite of what Gojo says to Jogo. And obviously Jogo is very strong. I think that's clear, but I think that really shows the two perspectives of the strongest characters in the verse, which is Sukuna and Gojo, and how they look at strength and how they look at curses. So obviously Gojo has a bias towards not liking curses, and he's like, yo Waimo, you know, you're weak, which people forget that was to Jogo. And then you have Sukuna, who just praises the strong in general, and he's like, someday I'm gonna die, and I'm gonna die to somebody that's stronger than me, and I'm gonna keep pretty much massacring people until that happens. So he has a deep recognition of when people are actually strong, and I think that there's definitely a huge perspective there. But I've seen a lot of people, again, I'm on Twitter a lot, but people are always talking about like who's right, who's wrong. Is Jogo strong? Is Sukuna saying he's strong because he is, or is Gojo right? And I think that the real answer is that Jogo is very strong, especially considered like with everybody around him. But I think when he's compared to the strongest, he comes off as very weak, which is clear in this fight. He gets his ass kicked. So I think that Sukuna saying that to him is really important. because that just gets into a lot of the philosophy of Sukuna and Gojo.
Different
Sorry,
perspectives.
I felt like I
of
just
them.
rambled on about that for like 5 minutes, but there's a lot to unpack there.
No, but you're right, because that made me think of a perspective that I hadn't before, because I forgot that him saying you're weak was to Jogo. Gojo saying that. Gojo saying to Jogo. That's always going to be confusing to me, those names. I can guarantee you the kanji is completely different, and the meaning of the names is completely different. It's just so similar for us. But first of all, I want to talk about the fact that I kind of understood when he saw Hanami and Dagon that he was dying, essentially, like this was the afterlife. But to cut from that scene that I thought was strangely beautiful, because like I don't find myself cheering for these characters because they're fighting on the side that I'm not necessarily cheering for. But like the way they were encouraging him that Mahito is still alive, I was like, you know what? Like, they really believe in their cause. And as awful as the things that they do, like, they truly believe that they're the ones in the right here. And to see them, like, encouraging each other in the afterlife was, like, kind of sweet, but also, like, they deserved that, I guess. So to go from that where I was like, oh, like, almost feeling for them, to cutting to literally Jogo just burning. That was so savage. I laughed. I shouldn't have laughed.
Poor guy.
Let Sukuna cook.
Oh no.
Oh, not cook. Oh god. But that was a savage move. And of course, like right before then, Sukuna had like kind of like done his technique against him. I didn't fully understand what had happened there. I'll probably figure that out after I watched the episode a few times, but it was very good. But I do like that Sukuna tells him that he was strong. I think that Sukuna and Gojo just have very different ways of looking at things, and Gojo just, first of all, likes to taunt people that he's fighting. He's a little cocky, you know, he really enjoys doing that. But I think Sukuna, like, he gets excited when someone challenges him to, like, I felt like he was having fun. Like, he actually had to fight back a little bit here, and he usually doesn't have to. So I think Sukuna just has a little bit different perspective, where it's like, if he has to fight, he can acknowledge that that person is strong. If Gojo is fighting someone, even if he has to put in a little effort, he still is like, you're weak.
Gojo is still kind of like, at least he acts a little bit childlike in those moments. It's like he's built up a lot of confidence because he's also always been told something, and he has yet to like fully lose any of his battles. He's like the child of prophecy, right? But Sukuna is the man of legends. So that inevitably is going to be an interesting fight at some point. But for now, Jogo didn't stand a chance. And yeah, what a savage move to like not only take him out the minute he decided that he was like getting bored, but to do it with Jogo's own technique. Because it's not Sukuna's technique. He is not like inherently a fire user, and so it probably wouldn't be his strongest move either, which is almost more insulting. It's like, at least let me take you out with like the best shot that I've got, and it's like you don't even need to like win with a devastating blow. Very interesting fight, but oddly good sportsmanship afterwards to say like, oh well, good try, you know, good job, maybe in the next life. Right. Which is actually Jogo's last words to his little friends too, like maybe may we meet again when we're reincarnated, which is very nice. Ties into like the overall like Buddhist themes of Jujutsu Kaisen, which I will save for another episode because I could talk about that for a very, very long time. Before we totally finish, though, we have to mention this episode's cliffhanger. We see an unknown creature kind of in the corner of the screen that's approaching Megumi and Haruta, who is standing there and is cursing Megumi to wake up. Megumi does not look very good right now. Oh no! Mina, your fave! What do you think just happened? It's only been like 2 seconds since we left him on the screen.
I mean, I knew things weren't going well, because right after the end of his battle with Toji, he had the injury in his abdomen, and then we saw Haruta like slash him in his back. So I already knew like something. If Megumi dies, I don't even know. I know you guys can't say anything. I got spoiled on one character death for this arc. I'm still waiting on that one. All the other stuff that's gone on, no idea. Still don't know what's going on with freaking Maki. I am not happy.
There's a reason why people are afraid of Shibuya arc.
I'm laughing because it hurts.
Coping.
Copium. Big dose of copium for me. Oh
I just won't talk about this scene because all I want to talk about is spoilers, so maybe I'll come back another week.
Yeah, Tom wants to talk about the creature.
Yeah.
Which I am also very excited for. Manga readers who know, it's going to be good. But this scene is, even just, of course, this cliffhanger is wild again. And as we've said, it's like, this is the best episode of JJK. And we said that last week, and we said it the week before that. And it's like, it keeps building on itself. And I feel like that hype and momentum is going to keep going because the story just like really, truly takes off in this arc. So I'm so happy to see it shine and get the appreciation that it deserves. Happy to be part of giving that appreciation. But we are definitely getting close to time here. So let's just go ahead and jump right into our favorite moments. So I will go first. And there's a lot to pick from here. I feel like I have to give a shout out to like just the animation of the fight scene. It's so good, but I'll leave it at that in case anybody else wants to talk about it. I actually want to talk about Toji's final moment here. And there's like a couple things that are really interesting to me that stood out. First is how his eyes changed. We noticed that like the reincarnation, like it was Toji, but he had those black eyes kind of indicating that it was still like primarily the body of the grandson guy, but possessed obviously by the spirit of Toji. But in this moment where he realizes that like Megumi is his son and he kind of takes control and takes initiative over the situation, his eyes change to Toji's eyes. Just a nice little catch, little Easter egg from the animators here that I thought was really lovely. And the other thing too is that in this last moment, we don't see the side of his face with the scar on his mouth. And I thought that was like some interesting symbolism too. This is not canon, but I am going to recommend it to, I think you might need to wait a little bit longer before there's like no spoilers in it. And certainly to any manga readers that are listening to the podcast.
Yeah. There's
a really, really good fan-made one-shot called, I believe, Hibernation. That's like all but confirmed by Gege. And it's like, it's like beautifully drawn. It really looks like JJK's art style. And it like adds a little bit about Toji's backstory in like the Zenin clan as a younger man. And like the significance of the scar on his face as well. And so in my mind, it's canon. I'm calling it canon.
Same.
And so really obviously, without giving spoilers, the scar is obviously like a physical manifestation of like his trauma within the Zenin clan. So the fact that in this scene, we do not see the side of his face with the scar as he's like saying farewell to like one of the only things in his life that's like ever brought him genuine joy. And it's in this same soft moment that he's like saying good for you, or Yokata, I'm so glad. Like I just thought that was like really special and really, really tastefully done. So those are the reasons that is my favorite.
That's great. I didn't notice that. Well, my favorite, obviously I was thinking I love that scene. I love Sukuna versus Jogo and the ending to that. But actually, I really like the way the episode ends as well. Again, they're doing this thing where they're kind of teasing what's going to come next week, and they've kind of set that up. Hannah said this earlier, but I really like it when episodes end with like the ending music or the intro music. And I think it's the first time this season that they've done it, but they had the end song come in much earlier. And it feels like it's kind of building into something and it's setting up new events. So the editing was really fun, and I'm a career editor, so I really like editing things. But I loved that. And they also introduced Urame, who I hope that I'm saying their name right, but I'm not 100% sure. But that is a really big character that has some events that come up. And obviously is kind of buddy-buddy with Sukuna, which is fun because it seems, from what I can tell, that he gives them a little bit more respect than most sorcerers, which is interesting. So we'll get to see that dynamic going forward. And spoilers with Megumi as well. But there's a lot going on. But they're setting up some fun stuff. And I like the editing of the ending.
Again, very hard to pick a favorite moment. And I'll admit that I have not thought about this once until this very moment. So I'm kind of crap shooting here. But I would probably have to say just the entire... I really liked Toji versus Megumi, but I have to call out a bit more of Jogo versus Sukuna here, just because I'm a sucker for fights with fire, honestly. I felt that not only was the animation just gorgeous and had me, fully invested in the fight, but also just like the little nuances of the fight and the little things they added, like the temperature or the thermometer breaking, and I'm trying to find the words how to put it. Just the way like Jogo's last minutes went out, where Sukuna still called him, like strong, but also was like the way he defeated him was so like kind of calling out his weakness because he killed him with his like own technique. I thought it was really, really fantastically done, and I loved it a lot. And also just like an end of a character that's been in the story for a while, even if he is like a villain. It's kind of crazy to see so many of these characters that we have learned so much about and just done, just completely done. So very final feeling fight, very excited to see what happens next. I'm wondering when Yuji's gonna kind of maybe start fighting back again or anything like that. So excited to see what else is to come from that fight.
Another, just such a good episode. Fantastic pacing, fantastic animation all around. And like I said, I actually have really high hopes that it's just going to keep spiraling like upwards. Like it's just going to continue to be incredible. So lucky that we get to be here and watch all of this as it's coming out. But with that, we are definitely at time. So I am pleased to give you this week's Shibuya secret. So in this episode, we finally get to see the famous shot of Sukuna's fiery bow and arrow technique, which is made up, of course, in the moment to kind of mock Jogo using his own cursed technique. And this was teased early on as like one of the key illustrations for the season. And also, of course, it's in the opening with specials. We finally get to see it, and it is like as fantastic as we were hoping it was going to be. But to reference another Shibuya secret that we've talked about briefly, of course, Ryomen Sukuna was a real person, made mythical by folklore, and known also as like a Buddhist bodhisattva. And in this mythology, Sukuna is traditionally said to always wield a bow and arrow. So obviously, Jujutsu Kaisen's version of Sukuna deviates from this myth a bit in like that imagery. But this particular scene is like a really fun folkloric nod to his traditional image with the bow and arrow. So I thought that was interesting that they were able to incorporate that here. Shibuya secret. With that is all we have for today's show, folks. So we hope that you enjoyed and that you'll come back next week. Please don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell on YouTube, give us a download of the podcast, and follow us on Spotify if you liked what you heard. We always appreciate a good rating on there as well. You can also give us a follow on TikTok and Instagram, and we are on X at Hashira Half. Until next week, Yowaimo.
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 Yowaimo. Honorary one for Brian. All right. See you next week, guys.